For decades, Americans have been told that the gold inside Fort Knox is untouchable, safely locked away behind one of the most secure vaults in the world. But what if it's not? What if behind those reinforced steel doors, the greatest financial scandal in history has been hiding in plain sight? Let's find out. So, Elon Musk, Senator Rand Paul, and his father, ex-presidential candidate Dr. Ron Paul, want answers. If an independent audit reveals that Fort Knox's gold is missing, it could potentially shatter the global financial system. The US dollar, trust in the Fed, the entire foundation of modern finance, everything is at risk. And of course, all of this is happening at this very moment when we are witnessing a massive surge, an unprecedented movement of gold from London to New York, leading to serious shortages. And meanwhile, we've got Russia and China hoarding gold like never before. And what we want to know is, are these events connected? And if so, what are they preparing for? Fort Knox officially holds 4,581.5 tons of gold, but there's just one problem. No one has independently verified that that gold is actually there. The last full audit was in 1953, and since then, there have only been two brief inspections, one in 1974 and the other in 2017. Zero independent audits, zero transparency. Why? All of this is pretty interesting, isn't it, really? Because it was only really a few days ago that Scott Bessent was calling for the monetization of the US balance sheet. And what's the inference here? He may well mean that he's looking at revaluing the gold. But in order to do that, the official holdings of US reserves will have to be audited. And that hasn't happened for decades. So here's what I want to know. As Bessent made this declaration, was someone on the other side of the Oval Office making just like this frantic gesture, mouthing, "Shut the hell up," because that person knew that there isn't any gold there. They can't monetize something that isn't there. Is all of this just coming full circle? On one side, you've got Trump and his team calling for the monetization of gold. But on the other side of the team, you've got Elon Musk and his Doge guys demanding full transparency and exposing whatever they can and auditing whatever they can. And now these two forces are about to collide. But here's the kicker. Is it really likely that the powers that be actually did see this coming? In the run-up to the US election, the Federal Reserve most likely knew that this was a real possibility, that this was going to happen. And this may well explain the enormous shipments of gold that we are seeing from London to New York. Because let's be honest, no audit is happening unless the gold is there. Elon knows that he can't fake this. So how long have they got until they absolutely have to do the right thing and do the audit? What happens to the price of gold in the meantime? Because the gold absolutely has to be there. There is no way on this earth that Trump, Musk, Bessent, any of them are going to admit that there's no gold, that the gold just is not good enough for the good delivery system, or worse, that it's no longer even owned by the US government. So let's have a look. What is Fort Knox? Well, Fort Knox is often thought to actually be the largest gold reserve in the world. But in truth, that title actually belongs to the actual vault that sits in the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. Now, security at Fort Knox is legendary. We've seen it in films. The vault is encased in granite, reinforced with steel, and protected by a 20-ton vault door. The facility is surrounded by minefields, electric fences, armed guards, and even Apache helicopters. But despite these measures, speculation about the actual contents within the vault persists. And when we're talking about an audit, what do we actually mean? Well, it's really simple. A gold audit is a structured, independent review of gold reserves, and that's to confirm their existence, their ownership, and the quality of that gold. And it involves three key parties: the entity that owns the gold, the custodian responsible for its storage, and of course, an external auditor who has been tasked with verifying the accuracy of those records. Now, the auditor comes in to examine the gold, to cross-check the custodian's own documentation, and is there to provide an assessment of whether or not the gold reserves align with the expectations and the reported figures. Independent oversight is, of course, absolutely critical because without it, there's just no way to verify whether or not the gold exists, if it has been lent out, or has been otherwise misrepresented. Now, in standard audits, statistical sampling is often used. Now, this means that not every single gold bar is checked. But really, in the case of Fort Knox, where there has just been so much speculation and the government has been resistant to any form of comprehensive independent review, well, the demand is for a full physical audit, complete with weight verification and assays to confirm this purity. Anything less than a thorough, transparent inspection under the media's scrutiny would surely fail to address all of these seriously long-standing concerns. Is the gold in Fort Knox good enough? Even if Fort Knox's gold reserves exist, there is another pressing issue. What if the gold just isn't of high enough quality to meet those high international standards? Much of the US Treasury's gold is held in the form of coin bars, which were created by melting down old gold coins without refining them. And these bars contain impurities such as copper, silver, and platinum, leaving them with a lower purity of around 90% compared to that of the 99.5% purity required for London good delivery. Now, this has been a problem before. When the German central bank, the Bundesbank, repatriated gold from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York in 2013 and 2014, a significant portion of those had to be melted down and recast because it just didn't meet modern standards. And this, of course, raises a massive concern. How much of the gold held by the US Treasury, including that in Fort Knox, is actually usable in global trade? And more importantly, if a full audit is conducted, will we discover that much of Fort Knox's gold is simply just not good enough? Now, if a full comprehensive review of the US gold reserves were to take place and the findings showed that the stockpile was significantly smaller than reported, well, the immediate question would be, what happens next? Surprisingly, the actual impact on gold prices might not be as extreme as people think, at least not in the short term. Now, why is that? Well, because the gold in Fort Knox isn't actively traded in the markets, the metal has been locked away for decades, so they say, and any revelation about its true quantity or quality would be more of a geopolitical earthquake than perhaps a direct supply shock. But here's where things get very interesting. The real winners, if it turns out that not all the gold there is maybe Moscow and Beijing, because a scandal of this magnitude would serve as the ultimate proof that the US financial leadership has been built on deception. Can you imagine the headlines in Russia and China, the two countries that have been quietly stockpiling gold while simultaneously working to undermine the US dollar? If Fort Knox turned out to be a shell, the world's confidence in the US monetary system just collapses overnight, and that could become the defining moment where power shifts from west to east. And here's another issue. Many people just keep saying that we need this audit. And we do. We need a really in-depth, deep audit. We've already got paperwork which is reviewed regularly. The real question isn't about yet another internal review. It's about something much, much bigger. We need an inspection, and inspections take time. We need a full-scale physical verification, a full tally count, a comprehensive weight check, an in-depth assay of the metal's purity. Every single bar has to be tested and accounted for. And because this isn't just a simple photo op inspection with a handful of officials nodding at some gold bars in a vault, there is a real need for transparent global stage verification. This is a monumental task. We're talking about tens of thousands of bars, each needing to be individually weighed, catalogued, and tested for purity. It would require hundreds of experts, specialized equipment, and massive logistical coordination. And most importantly, it would take time, a lot of time. And time can cost you. Because if estimates are correct and a full reweigh and reassay of Fort Knox's stockpile could take years, it's what's happening during that time that is a problem. Markets could be rattled. The US government would be in major damage control mode, and the confidence in this entire financial system really would be hanging by a thread. So is the US government really prepared to take that risk? And can it afford not to, given its efforts with Doge? But let's for a second do one of my absolute favourite things and just catastrophize for a minute or two. Because what if an audit revealed that Fort Knox is empty? No gold. Gone. Well, the fallout could well be catastrophic. First, trust in the US dollar may well collapse overnight. I know that the US dollar isn't backed by gold, but confidence in America's financial system does still rest on the belief that the government is in the very least telling the truth. And if Fort Knox is empty, well, what else have they lied about? Markets would react instantly, with trust in the dollar shattered. Goodness knows where gold prices could reach, maybe unimaginable heights, and the global financial order would be thrown into chaos, and nations would be scrambling to protect their assets. Now, foreign nations, as we just mentioned, China, Russia, could accelerate de-dollarization, shifting to gold-backed trade or even digital alternatives. The US economy could face capital flight, market turmoil, and a severe recession. One thing is certain. If Fort Knox is empty, the dollar, as we know it, is likely to be on its way out, and fast. So it goes without saying we're at a critical moment. Gold is moving. Powerful people are making noises about it, and the push for transparency is stronger than ever. If an audit happens, what does it all really mean? What is the real play here? Are we standing at the edge of a moment when the US will pull off the biggest financial scandal in history? Or is this the beginning of this gold-backed reset? One thing's for sure, if Fort Knox does get audited, the world is going to be watching very closely indeed. But what I really want to know is what you think. Hit subscribe, talk to us in the comments below. Let's keep the conversation going, and we'll see you next time.